Pornography is something that has historically always been enjoyed in private, away from the judging eyes of friends, family, and the general public. For the most part. And the more depraved it gets, the further we retreat into the shadows, hoping to hide our shame from the light of day. I can think of at least one glowing exception to this behavior, though. An exception in which, rather than keeping it secret, millions of people opted to share it with those closest to them, and sometimes, millions of complete strangers on the internet. This is the story of the time a filthy porn clip got turned into a communal experience for people around the world. This is the story of 2 Girls, 1 Cup. It goes without saying that YouTube is almost definitely going to demonetize this video, but thankfully, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. If you're the type of person who's for some reason invested in finding out the rich backstories of porn clips, NordVPN can make sure there's absolutely no record of your viewing habits. And if you're traveling this time of year, as people tend to do, NordVPN's encryption can make sure that your data is protected while you're connected to any kind of shady public Wi-Fi. Just go to nordvpn.com/Whang for 75% off a 3-year deal and use code Whang for an extra month. The other day I saw a bunch of people tweeting about a vegan milkshake made out of hummus, and it suddenly reminded me of perhaps the most infamous viral shock video of all time. Of course, I'm talking about 2 Girls, 1 Cup. Obviously, I can't actually show this one to you here, but in case you somehow missed it, 2 Girls, 1 Cup was a montage of 2 girls dramatically eating poop out of a cup. And after they ate it, they took turns puking it into each other's mouths, alternating roles as Mama Bird and Baby Bird. And all this goes on as a classy piano theme from a 1971 French film plays. But where did this thing come from? The 2 Girls, 1 Cup story begins when this video clip was posted to the offtopic.com forums in the After Hours section. The video quickly gained a lot of attention on these forums, as it seemed to do wherever it was posted. Wanting a way to quickly share the video with friends, a user named Cojones purchased the URL 2girls1cup.com. And he created the now infamous website on August 12, 2007. And he quickly forgot about it until his hosting service came knocking on his door looking for money. During the first month of the site being up, I had encountered some issues. At that time, I had no care for the site and had even forgotten that the site existed. Until one day where it was brought to my attention that I owed some money to the hosting company due to bandwidth overages. At that time, I thought it was some sort of mistake. Either that or the company was trying to get some money out of me. It was all confirmed that I did indeed exceed bandwidth usages, and I directed myself to my analytics account. And if we look at the analytics screenshot that Cojones posted, it was on August 20th that the site really began to take off. It was at that point that 2 Girls, 1 Cup had begun to make its way far outside the original intended audience of offtopic.com users and became a viral shock site in the great tradition of goatc.cx, meatspin.com, or lemonparty.org. But unlike a lot of the shock sites that came before it, 2girls.com evolved into something that people weren't looking at by accident, but on purpose. And it was the trend of people reacting to 2 Girls, 1 Cup that really propelled it to the heights that it reached. The first such video is believed to have been uploaded to YouTube on September 21st, 2007 by a user named Fartnewt. As of the time of this recording, Fartnewt's video now has over 14 million views. And Fartnewt's success inspired a whole wave of people to start putting their reactions out there. Practically overnight, YouTube became flooded with people sharing their reactions to 2 Girls, 1 Cup, and their family members' reactions too. And although reaction videos had existed to some extent previously, what we were witnessing here was the true genesis of the personality-driven reaction format that would wind up taking over YouTube for years. It's kind of fitting that the reaction video genre was basically spawned by literal shit. And on October 11th, the site's traffic literally doubled overnight, going from 100,000 views to 200,000 views. And those numbers would more than double the next month. At this point, Cojones had hired a tech-savvy friend to help deal with the maintenance of the site, and additionally, he began to monetize it with ads. But the money wasn't really what excited Cojones. Rather, it was the thrill of being the man behind the shit-stained curtain. At this point, everything was Rick Ross, boss, and we felt on top of the world. Not because we were making some money off the site, but more so because of all the attraction the site had received. I felt like an undercover superstar. I would walk around Chicago and listen to people talk about 2 Girls, 1 Cup, and I would always giggle inside knowing that it was me who created the site. It was kind of a cool feeling, but at the same time I felt awkward for exposing something so disgusting. The fad had gone from something that was intended really just for the consumption of a specific message board to a full-blown mainstream sensation. It was at this point that celebrity started to weigh in. You had John Mayer making his parody of it. And although he was eating yogurt in it as a spoof, there were a lot of people who questioned the authenticity of the shit in the video. A lot of people thought that perhaps they had done some kind of movie magic, like what they did with Marmalade and Salo. There was a lot of debate over this, and fittingly, it was summarized really well by perhaps the only other figure in porn as mainstream as 2Girls1Cup, Ron Jeremy.
They probably substituted it for pistachio ice cream.
No, I believe that's the real deal.
No, I don't think it is.
You don't think it is? All right, keep watching.
They might have substituted.
Keep watching.
How could they go that much? Girls like that don't go that much.
What, do you think they're men?
You've had girlfriends this small.
You saw them go to their butt? You think they're men?
Girls have little balls when they go to the bathroom.
And this debate was actually more important than people realized. In fact, the US government was quite concerned with the provenance of the shit featured in 2Girls1Cup. In 2005, under the Bush administration, the Department of Justice created a new organization known as the Obscenity Prosecution Task Force. Their job was to prosecute people involved in the production and distribution of porn that they believed to be in violation of obscenity laws. And one of the men who was prosecuted by this organization was a pornographer and self-described shock artist named Ira Isaacs. When Isaacs was prosecuted, there was a lot of confusion created by news sites that falsely reported that he was the creator of 2Girls1Cup. He was actually prosecuted for a number of different Scat films, but the confusion was created when he used 2Girls1Cup to justify his defense of Hollywood Scat Amateurs 10. His argument would become popularly dubbed the 2Girls1Cup defense. Until I saw 2Girls1Cup, I wouldn't have thought so many regular people would want to watch this stuff. There are millions of people watching it. For now, it's probably most people like the shock value of it. This is art that asks questions about what's ugly, acceptable, taboo. It takes something mundane, like going to the bathroom, and puts it in a new light. It inspires people. Just because it has sex in it, and deals with a subject matter that isn't typically in art, doesn't mean it isn't art. Getting the court to decide that Isaac's films were in fact art was key to fighting off the obscenity case. But unfortunately for Ira Isaacs, the court didn't see things his way. After several years of mistrials and delays, it was found that Ira Isaacs was guilty of obscenity. And because of this, Ira Isaacs was sentenced to 4 years in prison. And due to the shabby reporting of a number of websites and the fact that few people actually saw their corrections, this led to a rumor that the creator of 2Girls1Cup was actually in jail for making it. In fact, the creator of 2Girls1Cup is very much free and has never been jailed for his work. 2Girls1Cup was actually the trailer to a larger film entitled Hungry Bitches. This film was created in Brazil by a director named Marco Antonio Fiorito, and although the film was perfectly legal to distribute inside of Brazil, when it made it to the US, it got on the radar of Bush's task force. And it was on September 5th of 2006 when a criminal complaint was raised against a Brazilian man in Florida named Danilo Simões Crozes. The complaint details a several-year investigation beginning in 2003 into two film distribution companies, Dragon Films and Lexus Media. It describes in detail a film entitled Toilet Man 6, as well as a number of other films all created by Marco Antonio Fiorito. To help the judge along, it also goes on to define terms like scat, bukkake, and fisting. And the complaint ends with a statement implicating Danilo. As noted above, Crochet is identified as the officer, director, treasurer, president for Lexus Multimedia on filings that were submitted to the Florida Secretary of State. In addition, Crochet opened and controlled the bank accounts of Lexus Multimedia and received portions of the proceeds that were made from the sale of videos and downloads by Lexus Multimedia, among other things. And at the request of Danilo's attorney, Marco Antonio Fiorito issued a statement. This statement is the only publicly known record of Fiorito addressing his work. He begins it by discussing his own history. In 1994, I became interested in producing films, and on my own, I learned the art of filmmaking. In 1996, I started a business with my wife, Joelma Brito Fiorito, who used the artistic name Leticia Miller. The business was producing fetish films. At that time, my wife and I did everything. We were the actors, the producers, as well as the filming. Sometimes we hired other people to operate the camera. We made these films to sell. When we started, the only films that we made were about feet fetishes. I placed ads in the local newspapers offering fetish films. The people that were interested called a phone number in the ad, and I told them about the available fetish films. The buyers would place an order, and I would personally deliver the videos to their homes, where I would collect the money for the sale of the videotapes. When the business started making money, we started to hire other actors for the films. He goes on to explain how he eventually partnered with a man named Luis Villas-Boas, who was much more adept at business and helped him grow things. In 1999, I received a call from Luis Villas-Boas, who had seen the newspaper ad and he was interested in knowing more about my business. Luis and I decided to meet personally. We met and I explained to Luis how my business operated. Luis suggested that the business could be on the internet. I did not understand anything about how the business could operate via the internet, so Luis explained and showed me how it would operate on the internet. I found this idea very interesting, and that is when Luis and I began our partnership. The partnership was called Dragon Films. Luis helps Marco grows the business, he begins acquiring URLs, he begins hiring new staff, and that's where Danilo comes into the picture. And this is where it starts to get pretty funny, because Marco did not like Danilo. I have met Danilo. I don't remember exactly when I met him for the first time, but I'm sure it was some years after I started the business with Luis. As I have mentioned before, I am a fetishist and I consider myself a person that is a compulsive fetishist, and therefore I spend a lot of money on fetishism. Luis noticed this licentious behavior. It was at this time that Luis introduced me to Danilo. Our first meeting was at my home in Sao Paulo and Danilo came with Luis. I found out that the reason Luis introduced me to Danilo was to show me that if I could control my addiction, I could be a more successful person financially. When I was introduced to Danilo Croce, I didn't like him. Since that time, I have seen Danilo a few times and always in social events, not ever in any business context. In fact, Marco's dislike for Danilo was so intense that he actually went out of his way to troll him. I always used my name in the fetish films that I produced. Letitia Miller used her name in the fetish films. Many of the actors in the fetish films use fictitious names. I decided, as a joke, to put the name Daniel Cross on a person in the fetish films. When I used the name Danny Cross, I already knew Danilo Croce, and I knew that Daniel Cross is the American way of saying Danilo Croce. So I thought it would be a joke to use the name Danny Cross, representing an influential person participating in my films. Sometime later, Luis told me that he had met Danilo and that he made a comment about his name joke, and that Danilo became very mad because of this. Luis also told me that Danilo requested that his name be removed from all of the films. I didn't do this because I was not worried about the repercussions of this fact, and also because Danny Cross is not Danilo Croce's name. He also commented on the legality of his films. The films that I make are not illegal in Brazil, and I didn't imagine they were illegal in the United States of America. I have already searched the internet, saw many American companies that sell this type of film on the internet, so I didn't imagine these films were illegal in the USA. Nobody ever told me that producing or having this type of film would be illegal in the USA. And because I don't participate in any of the administrative matters of the business, I don't know any of the contact from the American government informing us that these films, or the sale of these films, was considered illegal. If I knew that the sale of these films via the internet was illegal, I would have stopped because the money is not the main reason that I make these films. And finally, he remarked about what's perhaps the most important part. Was the poop real? I have already made fetish movies with scat/feces using chocolate instead of feces. Many actors make scat films, but they don't agree to eat feces. Ultimately, Marco's statement did no favors for Danilo, who is sentenced to 3 years probation and ordered to pay $98,000. And I imagine Marco had a good laugh when he got that news. As for the 2Girls1Cup website, Cajones explains its decline. As mentioned earlier, the site was reaching its peak. The following month, December 12th to January 12th, the site brought in 8 million visits, to then followed by January-February, which brought in 5 million visits. At this point, we had been cut from all revenue sources due to the site nature and were losing money quick. We were barely breaking even for server costs and all the other good stuff. We eventually sold the site in February and washed our hands with it. The new owners did some super shady shit like require a credit card to view the video, which I was totally against for, but there wasn't anything I could have done. And although he could not legally give an exact figure, Cajones stated that it was at least 6 figures he was paid. And thus concludes the 2Girls1Cup story. If you like this video, you'll probably also like my one about Rotten.com. I'm out of here.